All righty. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to the June meeting, if you can believe it's already June, meeting of Lawrence City Council. We welcome you all tonight. I do call us to order, but finding that there is a quorum. I have heard from Councilor Sullivan. She is under the weather, so she will not be joining us tonight. Ms. Lattimore is not here, but we understand that she is on the way, and so she will join us when she gets here. But since we have a quorum and it is 5:34, I will ask that we begin tonight with an invocation led by Councilor Lowry, and I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and we'll go from there.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the ability to come here as a group to help lead this awesome city. We appreciate all that you do for us. We appreciate all that you do to look out for all of our friends, both the well and the sick. We appreciate you looking out for our country and all its leaders. Please look out for our troops that are abroad and protecting us. And we pray in thy name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. It is a pleasure to have you here. It has been a busy month. Our city team has been hard at work on pursuing projects that have been in the works for quite some time, both things that are very visible and things that are a little bit more behind the scenes. Things that the public might not be as aware of, things that are more behind the scenes involve our plans for future growth. And one of the things that we've talked an awful lot about lately is new planned subdivisions, what the future of housing growth looks like in the city. Obviously, we have a planning commission, and we'll hopefully be appointing members to that planning commission tonight. But in assisting people who are interested in building and developing the city, we do a lot of legwork behind the scenes to speak with people who are putting together plans and working with them so that their plans are in line with what council and the public has indicated is what they'd like to see in our neighborhoods, trying to avoid the mistakes that other communities have made. So that involves things like making sure that appropriate traffic studies are done so that when neighborhoods are built, that the impact on the greater community is taken into account. When improvements need to be done to our roads, making sure that the developer's paying those costs so that we're not having to foot the bill as the city of Lawrence. Looking at simple things that can be done to improve the design of neighborhoods, like the layout of roads, to make sure that we don't have internal traffic problems within neighborhoods, that we have traffic calming measures inside neighborhoods, so that we don't create drag strips. Livability is the highest priority, and so I'm really happy to report we have been able to have some really productive conversations and are looking forward to seeing what the feedback is from these proposed projects. Seeing hopefully that feedback has been taken apart so that they're in line with city priorities, but also looking to make sure that things that council has already taken a look at which may or may not need to come back before council, are being designed to the best of their ability, but we're doing our best to do quality control. So I know that's one of the things that we've heard a lot about. There's a concern not only that we grow, but grow well. And so we're not just talking about it, we're doing the hard work of making sure that we're coordinating to make sure that we have good neighborhoods. Once those houses are built, they'll be with us for a very long time. And so it's important that we do it right and do it right the first time. Those are some of the behind the scene things we've been working on. You also have more public things. This past weekend, we were pleased to celebrate the city's second annual Juneteenth celebration. It was my pleasure to be invited to take part in that, but at this time, I'd like to defer to Councilwoman Campbell, who is heavily involved in the planning of that festival, and I'd invite her to sort of give us a brief report on that event. Ms. Campbell?
I think we can be proud as a community for what happened on Saturday as we celebrated Juneteenth. The numbers were tremendous. The entertainment was vast and enjoyed by our youth as well as everybody in between. We had some excellent speakers to explain to us what Juneteenth is and how we can just continue to celebrate in unity and love. And so I think we have a lot to be proud about, and we appreciate the opportunity to do that.
I think for my part, being present and seeing that event, it was just really heartwarming to see the broad spectrum of the community represented. People from every different background, young and old. I want to congratulate the committee on doing an excellent job of putting together a lineup. So you had everything from storytellers for children to really insightful educational pieces for adults.
African dancers and drummers.
Yeah, dancers. I was especially impressed with them. It was a good day for the city, and I hope it's something that makes us all proud. We will have other and further discussions based upon our agenda tonight that will have some bearing on the things we've been working on. But I will just mention briefly that since our last monthly meeting, we had a workshop meeting as City Council, and we were able to review applications from a broad cross-section of community members who are interested in serving on community city commissions and boards. And so we will present those tonight as new business, hopefully for City Council's approval of nominees. So with that said, I'll move us on to the second item on the agenda, which is public comment. Administrator, looks as if we didn't have anybody sign up to speak in advance. I do want to note, just because my mind wasn't jogged when I was making my remarks just a moment ago. One of the questions I've gotten recently, or we have gotten recently, are questions about the recycling center and the upgrades to the recycling center, what that will mean for the surrounding community. And so I hope I can put minds at ease tonight by explaining that we're not breaking virgin ground to put a new recycling center in the middle of an area that hasn't had that sort of facility there that hasn't existed before. the recycling center has been in that location for the better part of 2 decades, if not more.
From the beginning, since we created one.
And I think a lot of effort went into building that originally with the artwork that was done on the front gable end to try to make sure that it was a facility that was handsome for what it was. Now, on the other hand, that doesn't mean we can't improve things. And so, far from being an eyesore or a nuisance and bringing smells and unpleasantness to the area, the improvements that are being implemented now that City Council approved over the course of several months and several meetings will actually do a lot to beautify the area because in addition to the facilities improvements on the recycling center itself, which should make recycling that much more clean and accessible than it is now, there will be a fenced enclosure that will contain some essentially storage garages for city trucks and equipment. But those will be enclosed in an opaque fence and surrounded by nice landscaping. So it should actually be a significant improvement on the existing facility as it is. And aside from that, I think the thing that has meant a lot to members of City Council, the thing that I think I've heard the most from all of y'all about is not only that we want to respect the history and the area and the neighbors that surround that facility, but we also want to show respect for the members of our staff who have been very, very patient in waiting for an upgrade to the city barn. And so this is a way of showing respect to the really hardworking folks in streets and sanitation. I know that they're very much looking forward to this upgrade, and I think the neighborhood as a whole will appreciate the aesthetic improvement to what's there now. Like I said, those questions had been raised, and while I had a moment to address them, I just wanted to make sure that hopefully we put some minds at ease. All right, moving on. First item before us is the consent agenda, which is approval of tonight's agenda as printed in the council minutes from May 16th. Do I hear any motions concerning the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion, we accept the consent agenda as printed.
I second.
Thank you, Mr. Lowry, and a second from Ms. Miller. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approval of consent agenda, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, no. And the agenda is approved. All right, in minutes. Moving on to old business, we have 2 items before us, 2 ordinances. The first is a redistricting ordinance. That's 5-23-01. This redistricting map is in front of you for your review. Once again, for the sake of anybody listening, and for council's benefit, I will reiterate that this is a map that was prepared by Fiscal Affairs in Columbia according to their best judgment about our demographics and as reflected in the 2020 census and the census blocks and the apportionment of those census blocks in accordance with state and federal law between our districts. This is not something that has had any specific revision or input or changes from our administration, either myself, any member of our staff, including the city administrator. This was prepared keeping the broad priorities in mind that we outlined to them, that we wanted to try to make these wards as logical and represent natural neighborhood interest and affinity. We wanted to have those reflected in the map. But beyond that, this is 100% a creation of the folks crunching the numbers in Columbia. So with that said, with the confidence knowing that if we approve this, this is done in accordance with the law, I would entertain any motions concerning this. If we have a motion and a second, we can open it up for any discussion.
I'll make a motion, we accept ordinance, or we'll open up ordinance 05-23-01 for discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Flower. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Ms. Miller, did you have a question?
That's the first reading, right?
Second reading.
That's the second reading.
Yes, ma'am.
No question.
Again, just to reiterate, because I know that there were some questions about this at our last meeting, I just also want to make clear that it is not legal or possible for us to redistrict or provide for potential new neighborhoods. We have to follow census data, and any neighborhoods which might be built in the future might have people that need to be represented, and we'll count those people in 2030. But hypothetically, if a developer declared bankruptcy and a neighborhood was never built, then we don't want to have done redistricting based upon houses and residents that never existed. So we have to follow what existed and was counted in 2020, and this does that. All righty. If there is no further discussion, I will call the question. All those in favor of approval of ordinance 5-2301 on second reading, indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. And the measure is passed unanimously. There is a small version for your review. There's also a larger version if you'd like to take that home for your reference. Or to share with anybody who may have questions about change lines.
No.
Come on in now.
For being tardy.
All right, moving on to the second item of old business before us, we have the budget, which is set forth in ordinance 5-23-02. That is a budget for the fiscal year ending in June 30th, 2024. The ordinance sets the city budget for the first time above the $10 million mark, first time in the city's history. $10,366,061. That is with no millage increase and a pay increase of, I believe, at least 5% for city employees. Are there any motions concerning the budget?
Somebody can make a motion.
The one we got now is running out on June 30th, so we need something.
Approve the budget, this new fiscal budget for 2023, 2024.
Thank you, Mr. Bolt. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I think Martin got in.
Yeah.
Everybody else.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Eric would be happy to answer your question.
Please, no question.
No, since I invoked his name, I will say that I am extremely proud of our administrator. He worked very hard to put this together, and he deserves tremendous credit for that.
I'll just say it's good that we're not going through what Greenville County's going through.
In many ways.
It's nasty up there. You'll see that on the news. They've got a bigger budget and they're increasing taxes. So we should all be thankful for what we have.
Well, we'll add that to the reasons for growth in Lawrence County.
Right.
All righty. If there is no further discussion, I call the question. All those in favor of approval of this proposed budget in ordinance 52302, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, no. And the budget is approved. On second reading, we can do things without running out the clock, so that's good. Maybe have a leg up on Congress there. Moving on to new business. The next item before City Council is a resolution. That is a resolution 230601, which appoints individuals to 3 boards of the City of Lawrence: the Planning Commission, the Board of Zoning Appeals, and the Historic Preservation Commission. I will report to City Council that we had a total of 29 applicants for these positions. There were 14 applicants for the Historic Preservation Commission. There were 10 applicants for the Planning Commission. There were 5 applicants for the Board of Zoning Appeals. Because the Board of Zoning Appeals has 5 members and we received 5 applicants, that was a fairly straightforward choice. So the top 5, as I mentioned earlier in my remarks, City Council met in a workshop, reviewed applications, and took and voted by ballot on names which were presented. Those ballots were tallied, and the top 5 vote getters for each position were as follows. For the Planning Commission, Suzanne Lowry, Barrett Holmes, John Young, Booker Ingram Jr., and Tony Abel. For the Board of Zoning Appeals, 5 names for 5 slots: Blake Davis, Spurgeon Reeder, Martin Holmes, Madge Bird, and Will Prescott. For the Historic Preservation Commission, James Floyd Jr., April Bailey, Beth Holmes, Dr. James Todd, Stanley Yergin. The resolution before you appoints those individuals to the boards, which would begin with immediate effect upon council's approval of these nominees. This is a resolution, so it only requires one vote of city council. So are there any motions concerning Resolution 23-0601?
I would like to make a motion to adopt, or to approve resolution number 2306-1.
Thank you, Ms. Miller.
Said names.
Is there a second?
I second the motion.
There's a motion from Ms. Miller and a second from Ms. Lattimore. Is there any discussion?
Yes, Mayor, I would like to move that the nominees who have just been appointed to have a staggered term of 2 and 3 years. I move that the nominees' names be listed alphabetically, and that the first 3 names appearing in each list have terms of 3 years, and that the remaining appointees in each list have a term of 2 years, so that we can have a system in place to keep things moving forward,
Thank you, Ms. Campbell.
not getting staggered.
As council's aware, all of the boards that we have currently have a system in place in which the members of the boards have staggered terms. Even if we have names, we need to have some designation for how those names are designated between 2 and 3 year terms. We have a motion from Ms. Campbell. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion from Ms. Campbell?
I think it's a good idea.
I second that. All righty. Is there any further discussion on Ms. Campbell's motion, which would be subject to approval of the slate of nominees overall and the approval of the resolution? Hearing none, I call the question. All those in favor of Ms. Campbell's motion to designate 2 and 3 year terms based upon the alphabetical listing of the nominees, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. And the motion is approved. Is there any further discussion regarding approval of the resolution and the slate of nominees' appointments overall? Hearing none, I call the question. All those in favor of resolution 230601, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. And the individuals are appointed unanimously by City Council, one of whom joins us here this evening. Mr. Yergin, thank you for your willingness to serve.
Thank you.
And to all those individuals, be they present or far away, we thank you for your willingness to serve. All right. I'm really pleased with the slate of nominees that was presented. Great group of folks. And for those that were not elected, we hope you'll stay interested, stay involved. There's lots of opportunities to serve.
Yes.
All right, moving on to the second item of new business, we have a resolution which provides a local match for a municipal association grant, which we are seeking. As part of our ongoing improvements to the city, we want to make sure that we do all we can to foster public involvement Traditionally, the way that we have posted public meetings and notices is on a bulletin board inside the lobby of City Hall. Believe it or not, that may not be the most effective way of doing that. Of course, we appreciate when they're published by the press, but we are interested in putting a digital kiosk, which would be placed in a central location and have people have the ability to be made aware of upcoming public events, public meetings, so that we encourage public participation. But also we'd be able to give directional signage. There's any number of possibilities. And so rather than paying for these out of city budget funds, at least solely, we have applied for a grant from the Municipal Association. However, that grant does request a commitment of a local cash or in-kind match of a minimum of 10%. And so since the application would be for $25,000, that would require a cash or in-kind match of $2,500. So in order to be able to make that commitment to the Municipal Association, this resolution is brought before council. Do I hear any motions concerning approval of resolution 230602?
So moved. I'll make a motion for 23-02.
Thank you, Mr. Bolt. We have a motion. Is there a second?
A second.
We have a motion by Mr. Bolt, a second by Ms. Campbell. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I got a question. So the kiosk, it'll go in City Hall, not the new, not over here.
So the idea is it would be outdoors.
Okay, it's in front of City Hall.
Well, the sort of tentative placement would be if you're on the plaza downtown and there's the new ramp that leads to the crosswalk that goes over to the Allen Lamb / Bailey building side. We've sort of set aside a little space beside that ramp where as people are entering and exiting and using that crosswalk and in that very center area, they'd be able to pass by that. There's something similar to what we're envisioning in Blowing Rock, North Carolina, and they've been able to use that with a lot of success. So it's something that theoretically we could sell advertising if we wanted to, but not necessarily. But there are things like our workshops and council meetings and the meetings of our boards and commissions and public calls for people to apply for boards and commissions. This would be just one more way to have a centralized posting point where everybody's able to know to go look. That kind of takes advantage of 21st century technology. The other advantage is, depending on the model that we choose, there's touchscreen technology. So if somebody wanted to know how to get to the library, you'd be able to, put in, and it could provide you some directional signage. So a lot of different uses.
So is that going to be near where the stage is right now? Or is the stage going to move later when the historic?
So the placement of the stage is intentionally temporary, because we want to be able to put it anywhere we want it. It's a lot easier to do it now because that area is level in a way that it wasn't before. But literally, if you're crossing, as you're about to cross the street, there's a ramp that cuts through the flower bed, tree bed, where there was no ramp before. Maybe 5 feet in length. So there's a spot immediately next to the ramp, so you could stand on the ramp and be able to read the signage. That's sort of where we have in mind, and there's electricity available there because you have the street lamps and all that's already in the area.
Sounds good.
Excellent.
It would be up where people can see it just driving through.
Yes, ma'am. It would be, well, not when they're driving through, it would be as they're walking.
As they're walking through.
How tall is it? Is it tall?
Well, it would depend on the design. I think the one in Blowing Rock is probably 7 feet tall, something like
Pretty much
that.
the same quote I got was, yeah,
Is that
big.
You have some that look like kind of, I don't know if you've ever seen that 2001 movie. Sort of obelisk. They have some that are sort of contained under a roof shelter. I think my preference would be something that looks tastefully minimal, so it doesn't stick out like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
So, is there any further discussion about the local match? All right, hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of passage of Resolution 230602, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, no. And the resolution passes unanimously. We're on a roll. Okay, next we have 3 different new proposed ordinances. Let me make sure I am addressing them in the right order here. So the first one concerns business license. Thank you. Don't know where my other one is. All right. So, Madam Clerk, what council has in front of them is updated, correct?
What is there, when they, not in their packet, but when they got here?
Okay. All right. So, there are slight changes between it in the ordinances between what was sent to you in your packet and what you have before you. They're just typographical errors that were corrected. Nothing of any substance, but I didn't want that to go without mentioning. So the first is an ordinance which relates to the revocation of business licenses in the city. And that is ordinance 6-23-01. The current ordinance, which is section 14-39, is a little bit lacking in that it sort of assumes a degree of honesty on behalf of business owners. Somebody could seek a business license based upon false pretenses. And if they seek that business license on false pretenses, simply because they say that their business is X doesn't mean it's X, it could be Y. And so this helps address that loophole. It allows a temporary suspension of their business license pending a hearing before City Council. If a license was mistakenly or improperly issued contrary to law, if the licensee has breached any condition upon which the license was issued or has failed to comply with the provisions of the business license article, if the licensee obtained the license through fraud, misrepresentation, false or misleading statements, evasion, or suppression of material facts, if a licensee has been convicted of an offense under the law or ordinance regulating business specifically, so if they got a traffic ticket, for instance, that doesn't mean they lose their business license. It would need to be something specifically related to a criminal offense conviction relating to business regulation. A crime involving dishonest conduct or moral turpitude, which would apply to things like fraud, or engaging in an unlawful sale of merchandise or prohibited goods. If a licensee has engaged in unlawful activity or nuisance that is related to their business, if a licensee is delinquent in the payment to the city of taxes or fees, or if the licensee is operating a business without electricity or water and the business is open to the public. And once again, that is a temporary suspension, and it would thereafter be brought before City Council for any further action to determine whether or not the suspension was made permanent. That is the substance of the ordinance. Are there any motions concerning 62301?
I make a motion that we accept ordinance 062301.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. We have a motion as a second. Is there any discussion?
I wish we could do the same thing for housing.
For what?
Housing.
Well, to the extent you have a landlord that is violating our city policies regarding how they conduct their business as a landlord, it does. This is a way of helping crack down on slumlords.
We need some teeth in on that.
They must obtain a business license to operate as a landlord, and if they do not have that business license, they would be in further violation of law.
Good point. If some of them want to get rid of some of these houses that they don't want to keep up,
I believe you're right, sir.
then we can tear it down.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Because it's housing, this is license. But the big concern is when the landlord, utilities in the landlord, and they move out without any inspection, 2 weeks or a day later, and I guess it's moving in. That's my greatest concern with that.
Well, and this is not a hypothetical situation. I'm very personally aware of a situation which in the county where you have people living in squalor that's not connected to any utilities. This kind of thing would help prevent that, because that would be a violation of law to do that. Also, if you're running a business and inviting the public in and you don't have any bathroom or running water or electricity, likewise, that's not fit. So, any other questions or discussion? All right. I appreciate council's help in hopefully filling this hole. I will call the question. All those in favor of passage of 6-23-01, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, no. Hearing none, the ordinance passes on first reading unanimously. Mr. Administrator. All righty. Moving on to ordinance 6-23-02, we have an ordinance relating to the care of animals. I've gotten some love letters recently, sent anonymously, unfortunately, because it means it's harder to respond, except through the miracle of modern technology, live and broadcast to the city. But I've gotten some letters concerning feral cats in the city, and in speaking with the police department, we know we have some issues with loopholes in our animal code in section 10-59, and so we followed up with Mr. Lawrence Flynn, who is our acting city attorney, and asked him to help prepare a ordinance which would help close some of those loopholes, and that is what is before you. I will present the ordinance as written, and then if the matter is open for discussion, I'd be happy to elaborate a little bit more. Section 10-59 would be amended to provide that no owner should fail to exercise proper care and control of their dog or permit the dog to disturb the peace and quiet of the neighborhood around them. That would include things like excessive, continuous, untimely barking, molesting of pedestrians, garbage collectors, other persons, chasing vehicles, habitually attacking other domestic animals, trespassing on public or private property. That activity or their failure to control their dog would be deemed an offense, and so they would be in violation of the city code. Any person having charge or custody of a dog must also provide for that dog and make sure that they have safe, clean food and shelter, which seems like a given, but it is not for many people, apparently, for some people. That means that any shelter that a dog is provided has to be free from accumulated waste and debris, so that the animal is able to walk and move about and lie down without coming into contact with filth. They have to have proper shelter, allow a dog to sit or lie down in a normal manner, watertight roof, a minimum of 4 sides, and opening for ingress and egress. And then there is a section which details if a dog is tethered outside, what the requirements are for that tether, and limitations on being able to do that when there is extreme weather, either too hot, too cold, hail, tornadoes, thunderstorms, tropical storms, hurricanes, etc. Then section 3 of the ordinance is broader than dogs. It applies to all animals. in that no person or owner having charge or custody of any animal shall overload, overdrive, overwork, or ill-treat an animal, deprive an animal of any necessary sustenance or shelter, leave an animal in a parked vehicle for longer than 10 minutes when temperatures are higher than 80 degrees or lower than freezing, and any violation of that section would be deemed an offense and punishable. That is the basic substance of the ordinance as presented to council. Are there any motions?
Make a motion. But discussion.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. There's a motion to approve for discussion.
Second.
And there is a second. Is there any such discussion?
If, what are we going to do about cats since the county doesn't take cats? And they are full right now, overcrowded with dogs, so we're really in a hard place right now.
We are. So I mentioned previously that I would present the ordinance as written, and then if we had any discussion, I'd elaborate. Section 2, because it is, Section 3, because it is broader than just relating to dogs, it would apply to cats. And so any person, whether it be owner or any person having charge or custody of an animal, could not provide that animal of necessary sustenance or shelter. I would take that to mean that if you had a colony of feral cats that was in your charge or custody, and you were encouraging that colony but not adequately providing for those animals, then you would be in violation of this ordinance. So there certainly is a problem with feral cats, but part of the reason we have the problem is because we have people who may be well-meaning but are sort of perpetuating the problem. We have supported the Humane Society, and I think we should continue to do that. But in terms of looking after not just dogs but other animals, I think this helps address something that we don't currently adequately address in our current ordinance. With that said, if this section is not robust enough, if between now and second reading, you would like to add additional language specifically relating to feral cats and having more detail, there are cities that do that, there are cities that don't. Or leave that to the judgment of council, assuming it were to pass tonight. I don't know if that answered your question, but. I don't see this as being an end-all be-all. We fix everything with this ordinance. But it's a terrible thing to see animals mistreated. Hopefully this helps with that. Any other questions or comments? Talking a bunch tonight. All right, all those,
Blame it on the rain.
all those in favor of passage of ordinance 6-2302 on first reading, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed, no. Thank you. The matter passes unanimously. Glad to know that none of y'all hate animals.
Anybody wants a cat, we have a spare one. Somebody dumped one off there.
I've got two.
Kidding. Second one, 6 months.
It really is time for us to address that. And for the public's sake, if anybody would like to write the mayor and wants an issue addressed, I'm more than happy to do it. It's helpful if I can contact you back though. All righty. Ordinance 6-2303 is our final ordinance before council tonight. And that is an amendment to our ordinance relating to various and miscellaneous offenses. Which is found in chapter 24, sections 5, 6, and 7 of our city code. This ordinance clearly states that it is a municipal violation for anyone to give false name and information to city law enforcement, which again would seem like a no-brainer, but apparently we have to clarify that.
To tell the truth, I thought I could lie.
If a police officer asks you for your name, you should give it to them. And your name, not somebody else's.
Not identify as Martin Loud.
It is also required that if a police officer asks you to identify yourself at a lawful traffic stop and being lawfully detained, that you do indeed identify yourself. Section 24-7 is amended to clarify that it is unlawful for any person to interrupt the proceedings of city council, any city commission, or meetings of the council. That would be things like budget workshops, things like that. And to disrupt those public meetings would be a violation of city ordinance and subject the violator to a disorderly conduct charge. Again, unless there is a specific camping area that is designated within our municipal parks by the city administrator or his designee, it is unlawful to camp in our public parks. That is something that should go without saying, but apparently must be said. It would be unlawful for anybody to set up structures or any sort of sleeping accommodations in our parks. Anybody that would be in violation of that must receive a warning, and only after the warning is ignored would the person be subject to a fine not to exceed $500 or 30 days. That is the substance of the ordinance. Are there any motions concerning 6-2303?
We need a motion. I'll make a motion.
Mr. Lowry has a motion.
I woke up. I'm sorry. Just kidding.
No, it's exciting.
Just kidding.
I'll say,
We have a motion and a second.
Brady's putting me to sleep over here.
I was waiting for you to say, make a motion too, and I didn't hear it. I thought you was fixing to have a photo.
Rain is,
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Any questions?
I think we need to build an ark out of here tonight.
We can put up a tent and just all sleep.
You're not put up a tent to stay here tonight, but we can,
And
I've got just one question for information. These people that drives the RVs, you know, the small RVs and what, I know I got one in the neighborhood that I kind of question every once in a while whether anybody's staying in it or not, because I have seen the little light burning. I have seen them come in the driveway, go in and out the door, but I have not convinced myself that they may be sleeping or staying or running in sometimes, so, that would be a violation for, wouldn't it? I mean,
If somebody's doing it on their own property, or on a, let's say, a DOT right away, I don't think it would fall under this ordinance. I think what this is specifically intended to address would be, for instance, somebody sleeping at the amphitheater.
I know I got 3 in my neighborhood, and 2 of them I think I feel pretty comfortable with, but I've got one that I feel like it's not their property, but that's where they're maybe staying or boarding, but they could be staying in a house. I don't know. I mean, but that would be a violation.
The difficulty, I'll just be perfectly candid about it. We have inadequate facilities for our homeless population. And unfortunately, I mean, you have some folks that are just doing it because they think it's cute, or just want to go camping and it's handy, I guess. But this is not a problem that the city of Lawrence can address on its own. We just simply don't have the budget to build a new homeless shelter to be able to meet the demands, not just of the city, but of the surrounding community. In my State of the City address this year, I identified the need for us to work together with the county and our other neighboring municipalities to address the issue jointly. But unless and until that happens, we do have some great facilities that are available. You have the Open Door in Clinton. You have Family Promise. If you have women who have been battered or abused, we have Women's Shelter. But if for whatever reason somebody doesn't want to or is not able to be in one of those facilities, sometimes they take it upon themselves to camp out in our public parks, which makes it less safe for the broader community to be able to use those parks. But also, a lot of times those people have particular struggles, needs that aren't being met. And if without a specific violation, which would mean that that is unlawful, then our police wouldn't have the ability to deal with that person. And it may be that the best thing that could be done is a municipal violation and to spend time in Johnson Detention Center, and hopefully for a short time. And that may mean that they're able to be connected with mental health treatment or addiction treatment that they need. So this isn't meant to be cruel or harsh or unloving, we have to care for the safety of the broader public and make sure our parks are safe. But this also provides a way of addressing some antisocial conduct on the part of individuals who may just need help.
I'm glad you said that, man, because unfortunately just asked me last week, what is the city doing for homeless? And I witnessed something with the police department, because most of the people that, not most, but some, these particular people here will have family, but there's mental health issues there too, that I think our police department handled it very well. However, it's still not solving the problem for homeless people, period. So family problems is overwhelmed. All the agency, Cleveland, everywhere is overwhelmed because there are a lot of people homeless at this point in the city of Lawrence and Lawrence County. So I don't know, it's something that we have to look for in the future as far as homeless shelter or supporting what we already have, but it's something that very much, especially mental health issues and everything that's going on. And again, I'm gonna use my word, we've been blessed, but thank God for our police department. They are trained to handle a situation like that, especially our chief, and he know what happened. So I don't know, you're familiar with the situation now, but anyway, it's something that we need to look at.
I'm very glad you brought that up. And you're right to give our police chief kudos on that. This is something that sort of situational awareness and specific training to deal with individuals with mental health issues and addiction issues is something that our police have been well trained on, and he's continued to step up that training. But simply dealing with somebody with care and meeting them at their point of need doesn't put a roof over their head. And as you point out quite rightly, we don't have the capacity that we need. If I had my personal wish, we would have a county facility that we could contribute to in the same way that we would, say, like the Chamber of Commerce or the Lawrence County Development Corporation, so that it would be an independent nonprofit, but it would serve that good in the community, but it could be jointly supported by our municipalities and county government, and hopefully receive state funding. I'd like to put it in a place not in this smack dab of the city of Lawrence, but someplace that would be accessible to our neighbors down the road in Clinton. I think someplace that would have relatively easy access to the mental health department and the Department of Social Services and the hospital would make a lot of sense. That's not my decision to make alone. But it's sort of like the animal situation. There's no one silver bullet that does this. This does not fix any homeless problem. We do try to keep our parks safe for the entire community, and we do need to make sure that people aren't engaging in antisocial behavior or misusing public property. And it may be the most loving thing to be able to connect somebody to the resources they need, because there's probable cause, because they're violating a municipal ordinance. The goal is not to punish, it's to...
And we put together a resource list, right?
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Let me ask Ms. Lattimore that. Yes, ma'am.
What you're just saying there, you're making a statement. Would it be wise if the county and the city work together, just bring this about for the homeless. That way, and bring in some other people too that will, like we said, mental health people. Bring them in too to kind of help start a way to solve the problem.
Absolutely. This is a subject I have already been in discussions with some of our county leadership about. They, as Ms. Miller pointed out, this is not a city of Lawrence problem. It's not even a Lawrence County problem. It's something that we're experiencing nationwide. And we live in a temperate climate. We live in a beautiful area. The cost of living here is lower than it is in places like Greenville. And so there are good factors that are pushing people our way, and there's also bad factors that are pushing people our way. So I will continue those conversations. It's something that I care a lot about. And just while I'm on my soapbox talking about it, I'll say we are paying for it right now because the people that we often house at Johnson Detention Center are simply people who are suffering from addiction and mental health issues. And because we don't treat those issues appropriately and simply put them in jail cells with the general population, we not only don't help them, we make a crime problem worse. So it's not as if we either spend money or don't. We are spending the money now. In my mind, it makes sense to spend it more effectively in a way that actually gets at the root of the problem. There's a lot of details to be worked out, but it should be a priority for the city. It is for me, and I appreciate y'all's shared concern.
Let's not leave out the schools because it definitely affects the children.
I have had a number of clients over the years that I've been appointed to represent. And it's difficult when you don't have an address to send paperwork to your client, but when you ask people where they live, it's in the woods behind the old Bilo or Winn-Dixie. Or in Little River Park. Part of the objective of growth, this is something we talk about at City Hall a lot, is we don't want to grow for growth's sake, but we have to be able to grow the economy to be able to raise additional revenue to be able to address these issues. Otherwise, we just put a bigger squeeze on the people that are already here. And we have a lot of well-meaning public organizations that are doing their bit, but we see what it looks like when you have that diffusion of efforts as opposed to what could happen if we were able to join forces and attack it with a unified front. This is one very little piece. Sorry for the rant.
It's important.
But needs discussion.
Y'all have any further questions about that section or any other part? All righty. Hearing no further discussion, I call the question. All those in favor of passage ordinance 62303 on first reading to amend section of our code relating to miscellaneous offenses, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed, no. And matters passed unanimously on first reading. That brings us to the end of our agenda.
call for the motion, we adjourn.
No second, but I second agree.
We have a plethora of seconds. Is there any objection? And hearing none, we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
You wanted us to leave the small room?
Take them if you want them.